You're listening to Graphic Novel Explorers Club podcast, an audiobook club.
Last time on Graphic Novel Explorers Club.
Cassidy, I'm coming to get you.
I can't believe Jesse left me again.
I was down in that pit. Thank you for fucking saving me, Jesse.
And that's where we left off on Volume 3 of the Preacher series. In today's episode, we will be covering Volumes 4 and 5.
The caveat being we're barely going to discuss Volume 4, which is titled Ancient History. And it was a bunch of side stories centered around, it was 3 side stories centered around
The Santa Killers.
How the Santa Killers became the Santa Killers.
How Arseface became Arseface.
Arseface, yep. And then a side story we're not even really going to get into about TC and Jody.
I would argue almost a fantasy story.
Yeah, well, it's like making fun of action movies. Like,
right.
It's making fun of Jean-Claude Van Damme is what I think.
I couldn't even picture that actually happening in the real world of Preacher. I almost felt like that was like some sort of fantasy they had.
So we'll cover that one real fast. You find out that how the Santa Killers became the Santa Killers was that his family, and this is kind of implied, wouldn't you say, like prior, like something happened to him in his history. You find out that he was a hardcore killer, almost like William Money in Unforgiven.
Right.
And one of the things I really appreciated about this is that they of this story, even though it's not really it's not important to know the backstory, is that in the introduction to the Santa Killers, it talks about how, you know, they talk about Gus McCready from Lonesome Dove and other fictional Western characters from different genres of movies and literature, and then they mix that in with real history, like William Bonney, who was Billy the Kid.
You know what this reminded me of?
What?
Old Man Logan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the beginning. It read very much because Wolverine is on the homestead. He's, the Sounds like guy with the Western wife and everything. And I kind of got that vibe from this.
I feel like this is a trope because, as Johnny knows from playing Red Dead Redemption as well, this is very much I'm going out to earn a living. I'm going to leave my wife and kid at home. Hope they're safe.
Well, he's not going out to earn a living though. He's
getting medicine. His daughter's sick.
Yeah, like his
right. Well, he leaves the house and then he comes back and something horrific happens to his family. And
what happens is his daughter and wife. He finds his wife. When he's still a bad guy, she gets kidnapped by Comanches. He saves her. He kills everyone. Mm-hmm. He just coincidentally was there to like collect scalps for bounty. And then finds his wife, finds this woman, winds up marrying her. She redeems him. He becomes a calmer man who's, I guess, in some sense, contributing to society as some sort of like farmer,
right.
Much like William Clint Eastwood's character in Unforgiven, where now he's just like a pig farmer.
Right, and sorry, I think this part is slightly important. To this unimportant story, that when the wife has the daughter, she even tells him, like, I wish you would read the good book to our daughter. He's like, you can read the Bible all you want. Yeah, I believe nothing in this, and I'm not. He's like, I'm not preventing you from teaching her, but he's like, but I will have no part in it.
Yeah, because he doesn't believe in it. So wife and child get sick. He goes into town to go get, and this is miles away. He thinks it's going to be about a 4-day round trip. Winds up being much longer than that because a snowstorm hits. He winds up getting snowed in. At the same time, there's an outlaw gang there, and they kind of force one of them to confront this guy, and he winds up killing him. And this guy in the gang, the Santa Killers winds up killing this kid because they provoke him to do it. The gang provokes this guy to do it, and they kind of part ways. There's a preacher in this group who recognizes him as like this slaughterer during the Civil War. He fought on the side of the Confederacy. He winds up leaving, and on the way, this wagon group he finds that he met initially going into town. When he's leaving, he finds the same Wagner group, but like everybody's been killed, and they're in the process of like raping a woman in the group, and he winds up shooting a bunch of them, killing a bunch of them, and they wind up getting away, but in the process it slows him down. So by the time he gets home, they kill his horse, and by the time the Santa Killers gets home, his wife and child are killed. So then he goes back into town to get his vengeance, and when he does, the leader of the gang winds up killing him instead. So he descends into hell. He's so filled with anger that he died while still having something to do that he basically freezes hell over. Coincidentally, at the same time, the devil and the angel of death are playing cards.
Poker, yeah. That kind of got a little hokey.
Yeah, I thought it was funny.
But I do like that he actually caused hell to freeze over and basically freak the devil out. Like,
Yeah,
you need to get out of here.
Because his heart's so cold. The devil tries to punish the hate out of him, out of the Santa Killers, and he can't. And at this time, he's not supernatural. He's just a regular man who's just so filled with hate. So then the angel of death comes in, and who's tired of being the angel of death. Him and the devil are having this discussion about, like, before humanity came around, we just lived in heaven. There was no, I didn't have this responsibility of having to kill people and collect their souls, and you weren't in charge of hell. Like,
Yeah, God started assigning people.
Yeah, assigning job duties. So the angel of death, who's tired of his job, tells the Saint of Killers, if you take over my duties, I'll allow you to go back to Earth to get your vengeance. So he does, and he melts his sword, his death sword, I guess, down into 2 Colts, six shooters, and he and turns him into the saint, basically the angel of death. And as he's leaving, the devil says, "Get the fuck out of here," or something like that. So he turns around and kills the devil.
Right.
And the angel of death's like, "What the hell did you just do?" And he seems to threaten the devil, and the devil's like, "Okay," or the angel of death, and the angel of death's like, "Okay, fine, go on your way." So he goes back into town, and he gets his vengeance. It's pretty goddamn gross when the guy who killed him and sent him to hell,
the gang leader.
Yeah, the gang leader has got a stump because he lost his hand when he was fighting the Santa Killers when he was human, and like he's peeing on a corpse of the Santa Killers, and like his blood comes out in his urine because he's like got basically like a blood poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty goddamn gross. And then that's kind of the conclusion of the story. Is now he's the Santa Killers.
So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Just like to point out that Johnny said it again, and I'm not going to repeat it.
Right.
What?
GD.
Oh, yeah, you did.
God damn it.
Oh my God. Every time. Never before. Anyway, I did think this did bring up 2 good questions. Because, like, one, you can't kill the devil. You can't kill God. You can't kill the devil. You can't kill Jesus. Like, they're like immortal. So I was like, what? You can't do that.
He's the angel of death. That's his guns. His
but
guns
it's the devil. But another good important thing here too on the theme of religion is the devil is trying to beat the hatred out of
the Santa Killers.
Thank you. Yes, but and I don't remember if it's Buddhist or Tao Te Ching. I apologize, but you can't fight hate with hate. You can only fight hate with love, and that's a kind of like a religious teaching. And I just thought that was shown very well. Like you can't.
Damn, that's
well, and
deep.
that's also some theory about hell is that if hell exists, it's if you go to hell,
and you're going.
If you go to hell with you're sent there to have whatever sent you there removed. So maybe it's almost a place for your soul or whatever to redeem itself, and then you can go to heaven.
Well, apparently no one's in charge, so they're probably backlogged with people staying in hell.
So then the story of Arseface.
Oh, did you have something?
I just want. This was of the volume probably my favorite. I thought it was
story.
It gave a lot of depth to the Saint of Killers. I liked hearing his backstory.
Yeah,
I thought it was pretty cool.
He's not just a Terminator.
Right.
He's got an actual history.
Exactly.
And can you bring up what Volume 4 really is? Because I did not know this until we started
Oh,
talking.
well, Johnny brought it up at the top of the hour. But basically, this volume is a collection of one-shots and specials.
Yeah,
so
just side stories that weren't part of the main
So
preacher line.
you probably won't be buying it exactly in this form, but if you happen to, you can skip Volume 4 entirely and not miss anything.
Yeah, and so I didn't know that. So when I first started reading this, I was like, what the hell? Give me back to the preacher.
Right.
See, I can say hell, just not GD. So yeah, then it goes into the story of Arseface, and I'll give like a really quick synopsis.
Yeah, this one's real quick.
So as we remember from Volume 1, Arseface is the son of a sheriff who tried to commit suicide, and he failed miserably, and now his...
Arseface tried.
Right,
His
yes,
dad
thank you.
succeeded.
Right. So, but Arseface, his face is all puckered in, looks kind of like a butthole, if you will. And so this was a story about why he tried to commit suicide, and it was really kind of sad. His dad's very abusive. His mother just lets the dad be abusive, kind of drinks. And him and his friend, they're very heavily into Nirvana.
Pubes. That's his friend's name is
Right.
Pube.
I was like, they're not heavily into pubes, right? Sorry, his friend Pubes. Well, they might be. I don't know. But so yes, his
That was in
friend
the
Pubes.
90s.
Yeah, so they're really heavy into Nirvana, and they go to this. They're out somewhere, and doesn't matter where. And they get beat up pretty bad, and they
just by bullies.
yeah, and also, the lead singer of Nirvana has just committed suicide. So they're talking about that.
Yeah.
So the one friend, Pubes, go ahead.
I was gonna say that basically the long and short of the story is he's got a horrible home life, he's got a horrible school life, and his friend is not that good of a friend to him, and like the friend winds up coercing him into taking his dad's shotgun, Arseface's dad's Sheriff Root's shotgun when he's passed out drunk, and so he can shoot this little dog that Pubes can shoot this little dog that always is yipping at him. And I would say like the one shining hope in his life is that Pubes' older sister and Pube allow Arseface to come and stay with them, but immediately his dad shows up and is like, you can't take, like, you got to come back home with me. And the kid, the older sister is like, oh no, you can't. His dad's a piece of shit, and beats him. And Sheriff Root turns around and gives her this horrible look, and it's like, I'm his fucking dad, basically. And she's like, oh, okay. But if you want to pick back up.
No, that's okay.
Way to mansplain it to
I
her.
know, like that's where I was at. Yeah, so I will pick it back up. Actually, no, you're good. Because I just glossed over that because
I think it's
It
important.
is, yeah. So after they get beat up, the friend Pubes convinces Arseface. He's like, we should do it. We should kill ourselves. Go get your dad's gun again.
Yeah, they joke about it, like.
But then his friend's really serious.
Yeah, after Kurt Cobain dies, yeah.
And they've been doing drugs. I think they did.
I'm
they
done
did
talking.
cocaine.
I'm so done.
What?
Go ahead.
Nope.
Oh, go for it.
Oh, as soon as I talk.
I was going to.
I'm waiting
I
for
know
you to
you.
talk.
So the friend goes first, shoots himself, and succeeds. But he does it. So the rifle is hitting kind of the bridge of his nose, right up like where your eyeballs are in between. So then, Arseface. What's his name before Arseface?
You don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for mansplaining that because I really didn't. So Arseface puts the gun, the rifle head, underneath his chin, and he shoots. And later up, he wakes up in the hospital, and he's just completely bandaged. And the Pube's sister's there, so it's good to bring her up. She's like, "What were you guys thinking? How could you do this?" So he gets out of the hospital. And
Wait. Well, I think that's the important part, though, is he's like, nobody cared about us, and
Right.
she loses her shit on
Yeah,
him. She's like,
that's
you
true.
whiny little piece of shit. Just because you thought nobody cared about you, like, I cared about you guys. I didn't want to see this happen. And there's other people in the community, even though you may not feel it, that did not want to see two kids kill themselves.
And I think through the artwork, I think it clicked with him that he realizes that he fucked up. That, in fact, by trying to take their lives, or succeeding in Pube's case, they actually did hurt the people who loved them.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if his dad really cared. And the mom was like, I'm out of here.
Well,
I'm
his
not
dad
dealing
didn't
with
love
this."
him.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think the problem is because the dad even said to him, "You couldn't even do this right."
Yeah.
But so the mom does leave, but I think that's more because she doesn't like the husband and she's at a loss for what to do.
She calls the son, like a dumbass. Like,
Right.
I'm not taking care of you and your dumbass kid anymore.
And he starts that gurgling talk where you don't know what he's saying. He's like drooling, and he tells his dad, like, "I'm really sorry. I'm going to try to be a better son." His dad doesn't understand it, and and I think his dad, it's more a reflection of his failure, because I think for those types of households, and I'm really generalizing here, but you don't want people to know what happens. Like, you have your private life and your public life, and being a police officer, you're supposed to have this thing of control, and and it showed like there was a weakness, and it was a reflection on him.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that happens throughout the story of Arseface, is that his dad keeps beating his ass and like fucking with him, because he's like, if you get caught, smoking weed or something like that,
Right, that's a reflection on me.
And then everyone beats the shit out of him, because then Sheriff Root winds up arresting them or throwing their weed out or whatever, and winds up.
And he gets mad at him. He's like, "Why don't you defend yourself?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and now clearly Arseface has an Arseface, so now it's something like you were saying, Francis, that the sheriff can't hide anymore. I mean, that's very evident.
Yeah.
His wife evidently left, and his kid evidently shot his face off. So it's not something you can kind of scoot under the rug.
But the whole thing of Arseface is he's just so fucking pathetic. Even he couldn't even commit suicide correctly. Like, he's.
So this, out of these three not so good stories, this was my favorite.
Arseface was?
It was my favorite, and because I could see like what I question still to this, because we're going to talk about him more throughout the series, but if you failed once and now your life is even harder, what is motivating him to stay alive? What is motivating for him to not try again to commit suicide? That's kind of where I'm at with him right now. Is like, and I think I don't know, I think a lot of people do get to a point, especially in high school. High school is just so hard, and you start questioning things, and he obviously, or maybe this is his motivation, he didn't really want to commit suicide. He's kind of going along with his friend.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was the most interesting out of all of them, and I thought too it's something that could happen in real life. Like, the Saint of Killers is not going to kill the devil in real life.
Far you know.
Somebody would try to commit suicide in real life and have failed.
Yeah, this would be like my second favorite story of the volume. And much like Francis said, it could happen in real life. I did have more sympathy for Arseface. I feel like the sister talking to him was the reason, because why wouldn't he be drinking himself or doing drugs all the time with a face like he has?
Yeah.
And I think that clicked with the sister saying that to him. So he committed himself. He believes his dad loves him. So he committed himself to be the best person he could to not hurt the ones he loves, which is his dad.
Yeah.
I mean, the dad didn't feel the same way, but I think that's why he loves his dad so much, wants to do so much with his dad, really wants to change his life. He had an epiphany at that moment when the sister talked.
But it's so weird that now, like, the dad, who is just an outright piece of shit,
Right.
A bully, abusive, control freak, racist, xenophobic. I think I'm describing Trump, but like, he wants to appease that person who's not worth appeasing.
But that's, classic.
Well, that's
like,
what just adds to his loserness, though.
Right.
Like, of
well,
him.
Abusive relationships are complicated, right? I mean, this is your dad.
Yeah.
I know it's easy to say, I'm just going to write this guy off. But if that's your whole world, your mom's left, and you love your dad, you legitimately love him, I mean, it's a very complex situation that I wouldn't know what to do necessarily. I mean, looking from the outside, you could say, well, just leave him. But, people say that all the time about abusive relationships. And I don't necessarily blame the victims in those cases, because depending upon what's going on in their life, it's not that they're weak. It could just be that they have hope. He has unrealistic hope that he could somehow bond with his dad.
Yeah, which is never going to happen.
Right.
But
Especially now.
yeah. But let's get into Volume 5.
Oh, sorry. So real quick, Volume 4. There's the third story
of TC and Jody.
Yeah, and that's all we need to say.
Yeah.
It's like a fantasy thing where they save some damsel in distress.
And they're clearly making fun of like 90s.
Well, the dialogue clearly, yeah, like you said, is, I mean, the guy, the cop in there even calls himself like a stern cop.
Yeah,
and
we're spending way too much time on this.
Yeah,
it's a stupid story. It's not even worth reading.
And I hate Jody, so.
And there's more bestiality, so.
Yeah.
Also, there's the plus. Oh wait, what?
Yeah, that was a plus in my book. So
yeah. Number one in the volume for me.
Do you want to talk about where Volume 5 picks up?
Yeah. So Volume 5 is a combination of.
It's called Dixie Fried.
Right, Dixie Fried, and it's a combination of a one-shot involving Cassidy called Blood and Whiskey, and then covers Preacher's issues 27 to 33.
Yeah. So the story starts off with Cassidy being chased by some cops, and I think this Cassidy story we can gloss over real fast too.
Although I did like it. It was funny.
Yeah, it's good. But he apparently slept with some cop's wife and is fleeing, and the sun is starting to come up. The cop shoots him in the head. He drives off a cliff, a la Thelma and Louise, and crashes into a river. Bells out of the car. Sheriff's waiting for him, winds up killing the sheriff, and then fleeing, and he's heading towards Texas and Louisiana border. And as he's driving, he gets a whiff in the air of like, he's like, wait, hold on, just let me out here. He's hitchhiking in a semi truck, and he's like, just let me out here. There's something in I can't even think of the town. In Louisiana.
New Orleans?
New Orleans. Why couldn't I think of that? He gets a whiff of something, goes into town and realizes there's another vampire here, but it's basically the vampire Lestat. He's just like this total tool.
Well, he's a stereotypical Euro-ish, like,
yeah, but
this is in a coffin.
But this is clearly making fun of the vampire, Anne Rice's style
Interview
of
with
vampire.
the vampire.
Yeah, right.
That whole style.
He's all pale, the white hair, keeps blood in his bar.
Yeah, and it turns out
he wants to be proper.
Well, it turns out he everything that you see in movies over the past 100 years, he thinks is real, and Cassidy sets him straight. It's like, no, you can. Basically, we can't go out during the day. He's like, I've been staked through the heart. It hurts. I lived.
Garlic,
all that stuff. Nothing will really hurt us except for sunlight. And even then, you just have to stand in the shadows.
Crosses.
Although, I don't know if you guys caught this. When Cassidy asks this guy, how were you turned? He's like, I don't know. I was just walking by a river, and a thing jumped out and bit me, and then
I caught that. I wonder if it was the same one.
Yeah,
that turned
it's gotta be
Cassidy, because it's the same exact description.
Right.
Yeah.
But he's only been a vampire for 10 years too, right? This Lestat guy.
So it turns out he's got a coven of wannabe vampires,
goth kids.
Yeah, was it something the Sang, vampires the Sang or whatever? And they write terrible poetry. A bunch of goth kids. Yeah. I can hear in my head in their little coven area, which is like below a church. I can imagine just Blue Monday
or a Joy
repeat.
Division.
Yeah, just playing over and over and over. So
Susie and the Banshees.
Yeah, so Cassidy tells this other vampire, like, knock this shit off. This is so fucking stupid. He takes him to a church, and the guy's like, I can't go in there. The cross is gonna burn us up. And every time he says something like that, Cassidy smacks him in the head. It's like, knock it off. That shit's not real. Like, just come in here. So come to find out, like, his eyes, he's wearing contacts. He bleaches his hair to like fit his image of what a vampire looks like. Cassidy and him go out drinking, and then they go back to the coven and make fun of the guys, and they run away.
Yeah, he's loosening up and becoming more like
human, for lack of a better term.
Right.
Then Cassidy is reading one night, and he's still in New Orleans, and he picks up another scent, and he runs to the church where they were at, and turns out that guy's killing a woman.
One of his followers, right?
Correct. And it's implied earlier in the story, the vampire says, I don't kill that often, and I can get by on like raw steak. And Cassidy's like, yeah, that's and the only time I ever kill someone is when they deserve it, and that's how you should be too. Well, the guy admits at this point that he's killed hundreds of his coven.
Well, so what he says, I'll woman-splain this part. So he kills her, and he's like, oh, that always happens when I try to turn them and I take it too far. And Cassie's like, you've done this before? He's like, hundreds of times.
Yeah.
So he's just going out using women and killing them with no regard.
Yeah. Not even trying, really.
Yeah.
But they're usually, I assume, like willing victims thinking they're going to turn a la Interview with a Vampire in some sort of romantic way.
Yeah. So then Cassidy jams a cross through his skull, kind of killing him. And he wakes up. This other vampire wakes up, and Cassidy has nailed him to the roof of the church, and the sun's coming up, and he. I love this part. Cassidy's like, "What happened to your fucking accent? Your Ponzi accent?" And the guy's like, no. He's basically begging to like let him free, and he won't. And then he burns up on the top of the building as the sun comes up.
Yeah, to be perfectly honest, I thought for a lot of the story that the guy was completely fake. I thought he was not an actual vampire.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then I thought he was just wanted to be one and was acting like it.
Oh.
Well, I thought it was interesting because Johnny hit on this, his story of how he became a vampire. Because in the movies, it does insinuate that if you get bitten by a vampire and drink the vampire's blood, you too are now a vampire. But in this series, that's not how it happens. This gruesome, ugly creature who lives in the water has
like
to
a
attack
banshee.
you. Yeah, it's not. You can't just make other vampires.
Yeah.
Which will be called back later, but that's what a lot of the coven want, is to be turned into vampires.
Correct. Yeah. They must have all read Vampire Lestat and Vampire
That was a
Chronicles.
great segue, by the way.
So then we get back to the main story. Airstar
Yay!
is
2 hours later.
Yeah.
Airstar
reading.
is in, where's he at? In San Francisco? Yeah, they're in San Francisco. He's all fucked up. He's got his head bandaged. His ear's missing. He's all torn up.
Don't they have like a wig montage?
Yeah, they have a wig and a hat montage, and he finally settles on like a white Cuban Pete hat.
I like that part because it didn't take itself too seriously.
No. In fact, I love the segment because when he's trying on the wigs, his face looks the same. They're just putting like a Moe wig from the Stooges and other well-known like haircuts.
He looks like Daddy Warbucks from Annie.
He kind of does. Yeah.
And
maybe it is
with
him.
all the wigs.
And then they cut to him trying on hats, and he's got the same like just disgruntled look on his face, and then he finds this white hat with a red band, like a fedora style, and he's got the same like pissed off look on his face, but then the corner of his lip is just turned up just a little bit of a smile. Like I thought that was just a terrific build up, and then a
payoff.
Barely there payoff, but it's a good payoff. Jesse and Tulip have reunited in San Francisco too, and or are they in New York? No, they're in New York, right? Yeah, they're in New York, because that's where the Volume 3 left off, was him and Cassidy. Jesse and Cassidy are in New York, and then Tulip meets up with him. Jesse's worried that she's going to be super pissed. Tulip just runs up and hugs him like, "Oh my God, I missed you! I can't believe you're alive."
Because he abandoned her in France to go save Cassidy. Like
that was at our recap at the beginning.
Well, but that was like an hour ago. So.
And they go back to a hotel room. She ties him up like she's gonna get super crazy in bed with him, and then she just leaves him there and it's like, "I'm gonna go meet up with my old friend." So tough, and I'll come back and get you when I want to. What's her friend's name?
I don't remember.
The black-haired chick.
Yeah, they go shooting guns.
So they meet up, and Tulip tells her best friend, like, "I can't believe he did this shit. I'm so pissed at him." And the friend's like, "Well, you got to cut him a little bit of a break. Like his heart was in the right place, but he did the wrong thing." And she goes, "And if you guys ever," she wants to fuck Jesse. The best friend wants to be with Jesse, and Jesse would be with her too if he wasn't with Tulip. They're hanging out drinking, and Cassidy shows up and proceeds to confess his love for Tulip, and it's completely out of the fucking blue. Like, how did you guys feel when that happened?
I thought maybe he got hit in the head one too many times.
Yeah.
I'll say my comments so we can get a little bit deeper into the story.
What your opinion is on it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Tulip is, like, ha ha ha, very funny. He's like, no, I have very deep feelings for you. I want to be with you. And she's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, Jesse is your best friend. He loves you. Why would you do this? Why would you create this issue in our friendship? So he's wasted, kind of drunk, and he keeps saying like, oh, because my body's still mending itself together from the events of what happened at the Grail. I'm not as immune to drinking and drugs as I should be. So Tulip goes back to Jesse and is like, I'm really sorry. Like, let's just make up, because she's really hurt and affected by Cassidy betraying his best friend. And now,
and it's important. She doesn't tell Jesse any of this.
No,
she
doesn't.
does not.
So then Jesse and the best friend and Tulip and Cassidy all meet up. The best friend pulls Jesse off to the side, and they go put some music in the jukebox. And they're at a bar, and they're kind of dancing and flirting, but it's harmless flirting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and Cassidy walks up and he's like, "I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to do that." It was as I mentioned earlier. He says, I'm on the mend. I was intoxicated. That's not me. I wouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
He keeps saying like, it's not me. I wouldn't do that. And she goes, well, don't ever do that shit again, because that would devastate Jesse, and I don't want to have to tell him about this. And he's like, why would you do that? And she goes, well, don't make me do that, basically. Then we jump ahead to they leave her behind in New York, the best friend, and we catch up with Arseface at a diner where it's. Go ahead.
No, this whole section of the story, Arseface, is really hard to believe his I don't know, his rise to fame.
Yeah, because he rides the motorcycle with the helmet, so you can't. He's kind of like a superhero.
Yeah,
almost
yeah.
This, or he's trying to be.
No. It's the story's implying like, oh, here comes this. Because what happens is the scene's cut to inside a diner where there's like this big giant hillbilly, and he's about to rape the waitress in the bathroom, and this badass pulls up on a motorcycle with a black helmet, leather jacket, white shirt, jeans, and anybody that tries to step up and stop this hillbilly gets his ass kicked by the hillbilly. And then Arseface pulls out a big ass gun, his dad's gun, and holds it in his face and tells him to leave. And the guy, doesn't tell him to leave, but just implies like, get the fuck out of here. And he does. And then he takes his helmet off, and it's Arseface, and everyone throws up. And they're disgusted. And the lady's like, thanks for doing that, but could you please look the other way? He's telling his story about what happened to him. And the waitress is like, the new waitress is on duty, is like, great, but don't look at me. And it's like, when are you going to wrap this up? Because you've cleared out nobody's going to eat
people come
here.
into the restaurant and then they walk out when they see him.
Right, and just to recap, he's still on his revenge trip to
get Jesse.
Kill Jesse.
So Jesse and Jesse and Tulip are planning on leaving New York, and they're going to head out west to do peyote. That's what they heard can unlock the Genesis. And they stop off at this coincidentally. Oh, I'm sorry. They're leaving New York, and Cassidy's going to stay behind. He tells Tulip basically like, I can't do this. I've got issues. I'm not going to do anything. And then he changes his mind at the last minute and goes with them. So then they wind up at the same diner, and Jesse pulls his Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy wind up at the same diner as Arseface, and he pulls the gun on them, and they just all start laughing at him. See, that's what I'm talking about. This guy, the character is so pathetic.
Yeah,
like, he can't,
even with a gun, he can't instill any kind of fear or threat to the characters.
Well, and Cassidy, I think Jesse tries to start helping him, and Cassidy's like, "Why would you help him? You put a gun in your face," and he's like,
"He's harmless."
Yeah, he's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
And then they kind of talk to Arseface about like, why are you trying to revenge your father? He wasn't that nice of a person.
Right.
Yeah.
And it finally kind of clicks with him, I think. And so then they kind of befriend him.
They do. And then they wind up all going. So Cassidy's like, "Oh, you need to unlock Genesis. I've got a friend who does voodoo in New Orleans that can probably help you." So so they go to New Orleans. They get Arseface laid. They pay for a hooker. They make him keep a bag on the hook on his face, and then
The bag comes off.
bag
You hear the prostitute screaming from
yeah,
outside.
and then he winds up
Singing.
singing. It must be on like.
Well, everyone loves him.
Yeah, it's like the streets of New Orleans. They run into a band, and the guys like call him up, and he starts singing.
Is it during Mardi Gras though?
I was wondering.
I
They
thought
don't
so.
Say it, but
Because
kind
there's
of implied.
chicks flashing their
Yeah.
tits. And,
No.
That's every day.
Yeah.
in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't
Or
know that.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Do,
What?
do you not know that?
I'm not an attractive man, so I don't get that.
Happens to me every
Oh,
day.
I'm sorry. For me.
We're like laughing. Sorry. Dennis.
You're
No.
So when they get to New Orleans, there's a lady or someone shooting a gun, a blank gun. They're just pulling the trigger on the gun at a photo, and as it gets closer and closer and closer into the photo, and they're saying die, click, die, you see it's Cassidy, and it's a photo torn in half, and it's pinned to the wall. Well, and then in New Orleans, Arseface winds up, getting called up on stage, and he starts singing. And I was trying to figure out what song he was singing. I could not tell, because there's a lot of lyrics in this comic series where.
Yeah, it's interesting because with Arseface, at some points of the novel now, they don't. So they do the closed captioning kind of with him. There's the girl speech, and then there's like the English speech, but they don't do that throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
So you don't always know what he's saying.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to like. Okay,
I assume the Nirvana song.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
figured it was something like that. So then he winds up like winning the crowd over, and then this like who was Elvis's manager? Colonel.
Right. I know who you're talking
The
about.
Colonel. A character similar to that shows up, and he's like, "Who are you? His parents or his guardians?"
He wants to make him a star.
Yeah, and Jesse and Cassidy are like, no, we're just his friend. We're just down here with him. And he's like, well, I think you could be a star. I'm going to take him under my wing. He's like, okay.
Which I found hard to believe, but
Yeah. Well, there's some foreshadowing later on with that.
Yeah,
That
and
we
there's
can get into.
and there's vampires and angels and devils in this book, so anything can happen. So Cassidy's friend shows up with his girlfriend, and there's obviously some bad blood between Cassidy and the friend. You don't know what, but it's awkward. But he tells Jesse, like, I can help you with unlocking Genesis. Like, we can figure out what's going on. We'll meet up at a in this graveyard tomorrow night to do that. Well, while they're in New Orleans, the coven, one of the coven members, sees Cassidy and like, oh shit, we can finally get this guy for breaking up our coven and making fun of us.
Well, and they also want his power.
right.
Yeah,
They
that
want to
too.
become
Yeah.
vampires. So
Yeah,
So this wasn't just for revenge purposes.
there's some revenge in it
Yeah.
though. So,
which is good that they actually had that one shot, because if you didn't read that, you were thinking, what's with these goth kids? I don't understand what's
Yeah.
happening. In fact, I would actually be really confused about that whole arc if I didn't read the little one shot about Cassidy going to New Orleans.
Yeah, I did. You bring up a good point with that, because I would have been very lost.
Well, and I think that's why it's in this volume,
sense.
whereas
Yeah.
the other side shots are in their own volume because they don't pertain to the story
connect
as
anything.
much. Yeah,
Mhm.
they certainly don't have the impact that that Cassidy's adventures in New Orleans happen. So Jesse, Arseface, and Cassidy wind up staying out. Tulip's like, I'm going back to the hotel, and while she's there, some of the coven break in, and she winds up killing a couple of them. They just I should say cold blood, but she just like blasts them
Right.
with her Desert Eagle, 50 caliber Desert Eagle. Takes one of the guys. It's like, take me to your leader, basically. So they go back to the coven, and Mako is the guy's name, right? It's like some shark or something to do with sharks. They try and attack her. She shoots the guy's hand off. One of the women in the coven winds up like sucking on his bloody stump.
Yeah.
And they're trying to be vampires.
Want to be
But even
poser
he said there's a
vampires.
time and a place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not the time.
And then they call up one of their other assistants, and she's like, she's somebody's important, like a senator or somebody's daughter, and out of spite, she's a prostitute, and her whole thing is like she hopes that one day her dad gets a call girl,
And it's her.
and it winds up being her after he like comes in the prostitute's mouth, and he'll look down and it'll wind up being her. I was like, that's fucked up.
That's Garth Ennis.
Yeah. So she leaves. She's like, leave us the fuck alone. Tulip leaves the coven. It's like, any more of this? I already killed a couple of your people. Any more? This is just gonna end badly for you guys. So, Cassidy, Tulip, and the friend, the voodoo friend and his girlfriend, wind up going out into the
Cemetery.
And the coven winds up showing up too.
Well, but before they do that, the guy, I remember his name. He's going to help Jesse unlock Genesis,
Yeah,
and it's through
the voodoo guy.
Right, it's through a snake. It's
Correct,
a huge
yeah.
serpent.
So he wraps the snake around Jesse, and he puts him into a trance, and Jesse's some of the backstory of Genesis plays out like a western in his
And they're
mind.
recording it on a tape recorder because
Yeah.
this is the 90s.
And Genesis is talking through Jesse.
Yeah.
And so the voodoo guy is asking Genesis questions, and then they're recording him. While this is going on, the coven winds up attacking. They behead Cassidy. They wind up shooting collateral damage the voodoo guy's girlfriend and killing her, and almost killed Jesse, but he snaps out of the trance when Tulip shoots the tape recorder, and it wakes him up. And then they wind up fucking up everybody, and they kill a bunch of them and a bunch of the coven.
Well, the coven beheads Cassidy. Or did you already say that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
But they
oh,
don't
okay,
kill
yeah.
him. They
Right.
can't-
Well,
yeah.
they can't. But he's literally like they're walking around
Right,
with his head.
Yeah. Well, it turns out that the friend or the person that was shooting the gun at the photo was trying to incite voodoo. Or I shouldn't say incite. Was trying to put a voodoo curse on Cassidy because she's an ex-girlfriend and she's got an eye patch, and he somehow smacked her eye out of her head or bit her eye out
they
or
never
something.
say
Yeah.
what happened.
And when
I thought she was the girl from the second volume that he met at the bar and took back to the bar.
That's what I was
It's
thinking.
possible,
Like,
yeah.
I kind of thought
See.
because the same like look and the blonde
Right.
hair.
I didn't even put that
and
together.
she looks
Yeah.
a lot like Tulip.
Yeah.
She looks
Oh,
a lot with
yeah.
the hair.
Oh, yeah.
Same, like
and-
bowl haircut.
Yeah, I'm speculating. There's nothing, but that's what I was thinking. This as soon as they showed who the girl was, I was like, oh, that looks like the girl he met at the bar.
From the first time he was in Louisiana.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I never even put that together.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly why. And
Well,
then-
I'm really smart.
you are for a woman. No.
Jesus. I mean,
No.
God damn it.
Double insult.
Yeah.
So many hell rosaries I have to do tonight.
For me, that's cool. If you do
Yeah.
the homework, I'm more than happy to.
But I mean,
say it.
that's where the one shots are helpful. You get the backstory of Arseface, so you do have some backed up sympathy for him that resonates more when you finally meet him in New Orleans. You understand what the hell's up with the coven goth
Yeah.
kids.
So
Right.
at the end of that coven story, Cassidy had met a blonde bartender, and they wind up hooking up. And that's where that story ends, and then we get back into the main story. So that's what Francis is talking about with the chick with the missing eye is probably that same bartender. And she was friends with the girlfriend of the voodoo priest. I call him voodoo guy. I guess I should call him a voodoo priest. Yeah,
So it comes up after everything's said and done. I'm sorry, did you already say this about how Cassidy and the voodoo dick guy, why they had a falling out?
The voodoo guy basically says, like, you fucked my girlfriend, an ex-girlfriend, when I trusted you. And there's a lot of repeated
Themes.
of people that are friends with Cassidy, and they talk about him as, he gets inside you. He knows how to weasel his way inside you, and that's what that's what the voodoo priest says is like, you got inside me and I thought I got inside of you and I trusted you. I would never have thought that you would do something like that.
But I don't think it's so much weaseling. He's a charmer. He's very charismatic.
He's manipulative. I think that's.
Is he manipulative though?
Yeah.
Well, did we finish up this book though? Did we
No,
finish?
So Cassidy realizes like, oh, you were friends with his ex-girlfriend with the eye patch was friends with the woman that just died, and he goes over to say sorry. And as soon as she opens the door, sees him, she freaks the fuck out and thinks he's there to kill her, which kind of speaks to his character
or her past experience.
Yeah, and then she points at her eye and it's like, you did this to me. Why would I ever forgive you for anything? And at a certain point, didn't Cassidy hit on Tulip again? Or
Yeah.
no?
So what happened to at the end of this novel? Because I want to get into what you're talking about, Dennis. I think it's really important. So basically, what happens is Cassidy's going to stay with Arseface to kind of manage him.
Oh, yeah, that's
with
right.
that
That's right.
with that producer, and Jesse and Tulip are going to go off on their adventure. But at the very end, Cassidy changes his mind and he joins him, and you see this look of despair on Tulip's face. And he did hit on her again. He said, like, I really love you. I've never felt this way about anyone before. And
says, and you feel the same way about me. I know it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when it first came up that he had feelings for Cassidy, I was like, okay, I'm sorry. Cassidy had feelings for Tulip. I was like, eh. And then he's like, I'm really sorry. I was like, okay. But as the novel progressed and he just kept pushing it, it seemed really out of character for me. I wasn't buying it. I don't know. And then going back to what you were saying about Cassidy being a charmer, and you saying Johnny's saying he's being manipulative. He's a vampire. He knows nothing's going to last. He's going to outlast everything. And up until this point, I never saw him as like a bad guy or a villain. And again, it still seems very out of character to me that he's going after Tulip as aggressively as he is. But again, the girl that he made lose the eye looks like Tulip, so maybe he has this type. And maybe something happened with like a past girlfriend, and that's what he gravitates to.
Yeah.
Well, it's really interesting because of everything we know of Cassidy, he doesn't seem like the type that would hurt someone knowingly. And we haven't seen beyond getting, hurt. He hasn't gone feral, really.
In the bar, like the slightest thing happens and he wants to kill somebody.
Right, but that's usually someone threatening. It's not like a hot girl walks by, I want to eat her. He doesn't usually have those kind of impulses.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like, what the fuck? I don't care. But if you start insulting him and punching him or being a dick, suddenly he goes feral. So what would have prompted him to somehow take this girl's eye out? I have no idea. But I agree with Francis. Maybe this is part of the vampire-ness. It's a combination of his charisma and the vampire part where he kind of wants to get close to her because that's his type, and maybe there is an inclination to hurt those type of women. Like he would actually bite and try to suck the blood out of those type of girls.
Or suck the life, not figuratively, but literally. I mean, not literally, but figuratively, suck the life out of them, to ruin them, basically.
Well, yeah, that's a really great point.
He's without feeling, so he has to suck the feeling out of someone, basically.
And I think too, this whole scenario is summed up in a song, "Jesse's Girl," right? Like this is a common theme. When a guy has a girlfriend, he hangs out with all the friends, then the guy's friends start liking her. I think it's just kind of a play on that too.
Could be.
That's a really deep Francis.
I don't believe, just in my heart, I don't believe Cassidy is like in love with Tulip. He just wants to bang her or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
but, like,
I don't think he's genuinely capable of love. I think it's lust.
He is, but not.
Well, you remember that girlfriend that got so old, the one with heroin? Remember, he cared about her so much, and he never hurt her. So that's why this whole thing with this other gal is
that's his story, though. We don't know if she was actually hurt by him.
That's true.
So, did anybody get what Jesse got out of this? Like what Genesis revealed? I didn't really get. I didn't really get the meat and potatoes. It kind of gets lost, right?
Yeah, that's what happens. Is the recording gets gets shot and now it's no good. But the Genesis is basically like recapping a little bit, like, you know, I have a power equal to God. There's a lot of memory in here, and Jesse has a lot of stuff locked away, and we need to get to it to be able to finish his mission, is basically what he says. So that's when at the end of it they decide to go out into the desert. And the story's closing, in the wrap up of it, the voodoo priest tells Tulip, you have to watch Cassidy, he's a dangerous person, do not trust him. And then Cassidy's supposed to leave with Arseface, and he doesn't, and he winds up going with Tulip. And then there was a thing I wanted to mention too, when the second time he confesses his love to Tulip when he's sober. He's not drunk at this point, so he has no excuse. The drawing of it, his face is completely in the black. He's gone from the light into the dark.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, he's basically that's what I'm trying to say. He's moved from the light into the darkness with that episode of the second time. It's the first time you can excuse it, I guess, because he was drunk. Second time, though, he's openly confessing. And
that's true. I forgot about what the voodoo guy said, which I discounted initially as just, well, you know, that's your interpretation, because we want to like Cassidy, right? I mean, this everything,
he is charming.
And then everything we've seen of him is like, look at him. He helped them out in the beginning when he didn't have to. He just wants to have a good time and get drunk. But there is this foreshadowing, I feel like, of some darker forces in play that we're not aware of.
And in the very last page, when Cassidy winds up showing up, Jesse's like, "Oh, get in here, asshole!" And the look on Tulip's face is just utter fucking despair of like, "Fuck, I thought this was done, and it's not." And then it goes to the cemetery, and you hear the click, and you see a photo again, and this time it's the voodoo priest shooting an empty gun at an image of Cassidy.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to say, this is a bit embarrassing. This was a page turner for me, because I was trying to with the volumes, I kind of break it up in sections because there's just a lot to read, and I was like, okay, like I'm at a good place where I could stop, but I just kept going. Like so after having volume 4 and then going back to 5, I really realized I'm invested in these 3 main characters now. Like I was glad to see Tulip and Jesse and Cassidy back. I was glad to learn more of the backstory. I wanted to see what was going to happen, you know, like what's happening. I don't feel like it really had much to do with the overall story arc. No. Yeah, because there's nothing about...
Well, it's really, you're starting to see it doesn't really have any... You find out, we forgot to mention this, so Airstar is now completely wanting vengeance against Jesse. He doesn't give a shit about the Grail. He's now in charge of the Grail. He's the main person, and he just wants straight up vengeance. He doesn't give a shit about redeeming anything or saving humanity or the world through his warped vision. He just wants to kill Jesse and have his vengeance. So you're caught up on that a little bit, and it's this side story into where now you're starting to get a little bit more revelation about Cassidy, and now there's this huge tension that's now been it's a monumental shift of, oh fuck, now there's this other problem in the relationship. You had an external problem in the affecting the group, and now you have an internal problem affecting the group.
Right. The honeymoon phase is over, right?
Yeah.
You get this awesome group of characters together. You love them. You figure they're just going to be the Justice League together, and now you're realizing there are cracks.
Is this us?
Is this us?
Pretty much. Johnny, I'm in love with you.
Oh, all right. I can live with that. It's not reciprocated. I'm Tulip then.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, yeah, I this is probably one of this book, and I think the next one are huge arcs in the story, and yeah, you just tear through them. You're just like, oh, I can't put this down. I got to keep reading it. So I'll be on the toilet for like an hour reading these.
Oh, gross! Because I borrowed these
Yeah,
from
can
you.
I read them first before
yeah, Johnny.
Jesus.
Well, thank you everyone for listening to how Johnny reads on the toilet.
Everybody reads on the goddamn toilet.
Yeah.
That's the name of the new podcast.
Everybody reads on the toilet.
Yeah.
We hope you join us next time as we cover Volume 6 of the Preacher series. I'm one of your hosts, Francis. You can find me on Instagram at Words and Waffles.
I'm Dennis. You can follow our Instagram at GN Explorers Club. Also on Twitter at Gina Explorers Club.
And this is Johnny. Yeah, we didn't introduce ourselves at the beginning. We just got
Yeah.
right into it. Oh, well. And you can follow me on Twitter at Serious Talk Twit. My Instagram, I don't know what that is. And my other podcast just started season 4, and it's at stspodcast.com. And it's on iTunes and Stitcher and all that. And if you guys can rate our podcast, we would love that. It helps us get new listeners. So if you can rate it on iTunes and Stitcher, it helps us with the fancy iTunes algorithms, suggesting other people listen to our podcast. That's it. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.
Thank
Bye.
you.
You ready, motherfuckers? Last time on Graphic Novel Explorers Club.
Cassidy, I'm coming to get you.
Jesse, I can't believe he left me again.
Oh, fick. I said, fick. All right.
You're going Jamaican.
Hey, I'm feeling irie. Come and save me, man. Down by the beach. That's not Irish accent?
It's kind of
All right.
close. It's
All
close.
right. Okay. All right. No, I can't do it. Damn it. Okay. Last time on Graphic Novel Explorers Club.
Cassidy, I'm coming to get you.
I can't believe Jesse left me again.
Oh, fick. I can't
You want
do
some
it.
like Lucky Charms or something?